that is where you'll find it. All right, welcome to today's Burst of Innovation. Today is all about influencing others during times of uncertainty. There's this gap between what we feel like we can control and what we feel like we can't control, right? This area of concern. And that's the gap that I want us to learn to play in even more today. Now, before we get started, two things I just want to tell you. One is there will be a giveaway today for the book, Innovation is Everybody's Business. A few of you won it last week. Yay, it should be in the mail. Things are taking a little longer, but it's possible today. So participation is key. I'm going to ask you to think about some things and actually put it in the chat bar when we get going. I think actually, and let me just say that having each of us put our stuff in the chat bar helps us all, doesn't it? Because then we get to see other people's thinking and we expand and we share and we grow together. All right, let's talk about influence. This is really an exercise in a mental reframe. And what it really does is it helps you increase your level of a sense of control. It helps you increase your productivity, your focus, and of course, your innovation. And to start out this kind of circles of control, this gap I want to talk about, and out of control or concern, I actually want to share a story of something that happened to me early on in my career that helped me think about this area that we're about to talk about. So when I was in my late 20s, I was building a strategy department for an advertising firm in New York City. I was brought on specifically to grow this department. I had done it at this other company I was with. My boss was in Chicago. So every week I had to fly and go see him and present where we were headed, what we were doing, what services we wanted to provide, all this stuff. And then I'd leave. And he and the committee, right, all these VPs, I'll never forget, their floor specifically had green carpeting. It was the executive floor. It was the only one with green carpeting in the entire building. It just always stuck with me. But every week when I left, he and the committee would then go and decide what they thought we should do, what I did well, what I didn't do well, what I should explore further, what I should shut down. And I would kind of wait for the call to come in because in my mind, what they decided was out of my control. I had already given them my presentation and my best work. We'd already had the conversation. Then those next 4 days were out of my control. We'll see what leadership does. One day, I was about to leave for the airport, and I said to Mike, my boss, Mike, hey, looking forward to getting the call in 4 days. Looking forward to see what you guys decide. I know it's out of my control, but hopefully it goes in the direction I want. I wanted some resources from them to actually push some ideas forward. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. First, he gave me a very stern look. He was a very fatherly type. And he said, Tamara, why do you think that that's out of your control what happens next? And I said, well, because I did my job, right? I did my presentation. I gave you my best thinking. Now you guys go off and think things through. And he said, no, Tamara, let me ask you something. Do you think you have influence over these people? I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, do you know their phone numbers? I said, yeah, of course I know their phone numbers. And he said, well, you don't think you could call them after you get back to New York City and have a discussion with them about where they are? You don't think that you can influence them and their decisions? That blew my mind. And the entire plane ride home, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I have way more influence over things that I think are out of my control. And that changed my view on how I interacted with people and situations and challenges and obstacles. And I want the same for you, particularly in times of uncertainty, when things out of our control feel even bigger and sometimes more overwhelming. So I want to show you my screen. I'm going to share this with you. I want to talk a little bit about it, and then I want to ask you a question. And that's where we're getting all interactive. Okay. All right. So here's what the circles tend to look like, right? We've got in control, things that we manage, our attitudes, how we spend our money, the work that we do, the emails that we send, right? Those are all in our control. And what happens is we then leap to this conversation about, okay, here's in control, what's out of our control, right? We can't control what our bosses do. We can't control when the company reorgs. We can't control when the marketplace shifts. We can't control a virus pandemic spreading across the globe. I think that conversation is actually really superficial. I think there's actually a middle ground, which is what I call the circle of influence. And there's actually been a lot of research done by this, and Stephen Covey has a similar tool out there that I learned a lot from as well to formulate this. the circle of influence. Those are the things that we can actually influence, that we always feel like are out of our control. Those are things that we can actually push and adjust and have a say in. And when we do that, when we get to that influence spot, here's the fascinating thing of what happens. What is in our control feels bigger, and what is out of our control feels smaller. So let's think about this for a second with the world that we're going through right now. And then I've got questions for you. When we think about the world right now, like I can't control if this virus, right, spreads any further than it has. I can't control what the government does to provide relief programs or what they tell me I can do and not do. But I can influence it by wearing my mask outside. I can influence it by having more of these Zoom calls with all of you. I actually have a lot more, even in these situations, that's in my control than I realize. So here's the questions I want to ask you, and I'm going to pull up the chat bar so that I can see. Here's what I want you to think about and the conversation I want us to have now. I want you to think about for a moment what feels like in your world that is totally out of your control. Or maybe it's in your job that's totally out of control. Maybe it's how leadership does something, or how your clients are currently responding to your products and services. Or maybe it's how you're spending your time. You feel like other people are taking your calendar, whatever it is. I want you to think about that. And then I want you to think about those circles. And I want you to think a little bit differently. So not how do I pull things that seem out of my control to in my control? Again, I think that's superficial. I think it doesn't work because it becomes this either or. It's not about having full control. It's about having influence. And those are two very different things. So now think about how could you influence those things that feel a little bit out of your control? Maybe that's people and how they respond to things. Maybe that's the situation and how you adjust to it. Maybe it's the outcome, what the deliverable happens. This is what I want you to start typing in the chat bar. I want you to type in there so that we can all see it, we can all share, and someone can win a book. How do you influence things that feel out of your control or a level away from you? That's the place we want to get to. Do you see the fundamental difference there? I'm sure that you do. You're all super smart. Clearly, you're here. There's a big difference between this is in my control and out of my control, and this is maybe in my control, this is out of my control, and here is this place I can play, which is what I can influence. Vishal says, getting new clients feels out of control. Right. So Vishal, my question to you now to answer is, well, what can you influence? I'll tell you from a personal note, this here, what we're doing, these 10-minute bursts of innovation, this is my way of influencing. The phone may not be ringing off the hook for people spending money, but you know what? This is getting more and more people into our world and allowing us to still make the impact we want to have. So hopefully I'm influencing my client's world, even though things are a little bit different. So Rachel says, my business model is being adapted significantly. I'm conducting some user interviews this week to be able to adapt in a way that will add value rather than what I can do. Love it, Rachel. That is such a great example, isn't it? Right? You can influence things by gathering data and gathering ideas. Kirby says, analyze the situation and talk through different scenarios. Oh my gosh, that's such a good one. Here's what I found with influence. Oftentimes influence comes from those conversations that you have, right? Helping somebody else see the opportunity, right? We're not the only ones that make decisions. We're not the only ones that create the outcome, but we can absolutely influence the people around us. And by the way, if you run a team, which I know a lot of you do, I highly suggest going to your team and doing this exercise and putting those circles up there and say, hey, let's talk about what feels in our control. Let's talk about what feels out of our control. Then having the real conversation around how do we influence all these things? That's why I said again, and I won't get on my soapbox for too long, but in versus out of control is too superficial, right? We're not going to pull what's happening with being quarantined into our control. We cannot control that. But we can influence the situation in our world and how we adjust to it and how we manage it. Tom, you said simplify the solution. Right, exactly. Simplifying things is a great way to influence things. Sarah writes, I'm sending product literature related to COVID-19 and researching industries for new business. Love it. What a great way to influence the people around you to send them that information. Tom Kaufman writes, what feels out of control is being completely quarantined and isolated physically from others. Yes, Tom, I feel you. How can I influence people is through calm, measured, factual information combined with compassion. Situationally, I can behave according to CDC guidelines. Yep. Oh my gosh, right? You can influence the situation to the best of your ability. You're not going to be able to answer this all that in our kind of, in fact, time is up, time that we have now. However, what I do want you to think about are these two questions and spend 10 minutes just going. I'm going to go back to those circles, right? To the bakes ones. Sorry, I wish I had a better PowerPoint. I wish I had good PowerPoint skills. This is a little janky, but I think you get the point. I really want you to play in that in-between space, and I want you to think about what is it that you can actually influence? What's in your control? What's out of your control? But how do you influence? Because as I said before, this is what makes it bigger. Tom Kaufman, I would love to give you a book. I love that answer about the kind of how you can influence during quarantine and being physically isolated, because I think it is something not only we're all dealing with kind of legally and logistically, but also mentally as well. And it's challenging, I think, personally for us. And I think it's really challenging for our businesses. And I'll just share very personally real quickly that I was talking to somebody else the other day about this whole quarantine thing. And I said, what I think I miss most is hugs. I just miss seeing people and hugging and saying hello. And it's just those little things. So then I thought, well, how can I influence that in my world? Well, I can have Zoom calls. I can connect with you on here. Like, we got to do our best, right, to influence stuff around us. So hopefully that wasn't TMI for the group, but we're all dealing with it. So Tom, all right, shoot me an email and you get the book. All right, can you believe it? Kirby just wrote, I know someone who was left in an affected area. They gained control that way. Kirby, thank you for sharing that. It's so funny. Like, it wouldn't have even occurred to me, I can leave. Not all of us can, but for those that can, that's brilliant. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. On Wednesday, we are talking, I just looked at my notes. We're talking about appreciative inquiry, which is how to use what's working as a springboard for what's not working. And sometimes we need to pull in the strengths to get to the innovation, not just the weaknesses. The other thing I want to remind you, and the link is in the show notes, and I'll put it in here again, is that the Innovation Summit is happening April 17th. It is actually starting to fill up. So I know some of you wanted to get your teams on, so I suggest you do that before we hit our limit. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to dig in, and we're going to transform those obstacles innovation. We are going to spend a lot more time actually being interactive and doing some of the work, which we can't do in our 10 minutes, although you guys do a phenomenal job of it. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. I will see you all soon. It's that awkward moment where I have to get off the meeting. I say that